Document. Part 1. The stars stretched endlessly before the stellar horizon, their light cold and distant. The ship floated silently through the vast emptiness of space, its engines humming softly as it navigated a region of the galaxy that few had ever explored. This was uncharted territory, a place where the maps ended and mystery began. For Captain Ryan Carter and his crew, it was both thrilling and unsettling. They were explorers, pioneers sent to push the boundaries of human knowledge, but even they couldn't ignore the strange feeling that something out there was watching them. On board the stellar horizon, life followed a predictable rhythm. The crew worked in shifts, monitoring instruments, running diagnostics, and cataloging anything unusual they encountered. It was during one of these routine scans that Elena Martinez, the ship's science officer, noticed something odd. Her station lit up with a faint but persistent signal. At first, she thought it might be interference or a glitch in the equipment. But when she ran additional tests, the results confirmed what she feared. It was real. Elena leaned closer to her console, her fingers dancing across the controls as she tried to isolate the source. The signal was weak, barely more than static, but within it, she could make out fragments of speech. Words drifted in and out, distorted and broken, but one phrase stood out clearly. "Help us. It's here." She froze, her heart pounding in. Her chest? There was no mistaking it. This was a distress call, and whoever sent it sounded terrified. Captain Elena called out, her voice steady, despite the unease creeping into her mind. Ryan turned away from the navigation panel where he'd been reviewing course adjustments. He crossed the bridge in a few quick strides, his boots clicking against the metal floor. His sharp blue eyes scanned the data displayed on Elena's screen, his brow furrowing as he processed the information. "Where is it coming from?" Ryan asked, his tone calm but firm. He trusted Elena's expertise, but this was unlike anything they'd encountered before. Distress calls weren't uncommon in deep space missions, but they usually came from ships or colonies, not random points in the void. Elena adjusted the settings on her console, narrowing down the signal's origin. A map of the surrounding sector appeared, dotted with stars and celestial bodies. One point blinked steadily, a small, unremarkable area near the edge of a dying star system. "It's coming from a research station," she said finally. "Or at least what's left of one." Ryan frowned. "What do you mean, what's left?" "The signal's erratic, like the station's systems are failing," Elena explained. "And judging by the energy readings, it's been abandoned for some time. But someone or something is still transmitting." The news sent a ripple of tension through the bridge. Lieutenant Jacob Hayes, who was seated at the helm, glanced over his shoulder. "You think it's worth checking out, sir?" he asked cautiously. Jacob had been on enough missions to know that not every mystery ended well. Ryan hesitated for a moment, weighing the risks. On one hand, investigating the signal could put the crew in danger. The other, ignoring a potential cry for help when, against everything they stood for. Finally, he nodded. "We're going to take a look," he decided, "but we'll proceed with caution. Prep a shuttle and assemble a team." Within an hour, the shuttle was ready. Ryan led the mission, accompanied by Elena, Jacob, and Samantha Sam Brooks, the ship's medic. As they detached from the stellar horizon and headed toward the coordinates, the mood inside the shuttle was tense. No one spoke much, each lost in their own thoughts. The closer they got to the source of the signal, the stronger the sense. A foreboding became. When the research station finally came into view, it was clear that something catastrophic had happened. The structure floated eerily in the darkness, its once pristine surface now scarred and battered. Large sections of the hull were missing, exposing the interior to the vacuum of space. Debris surrounded the station, remnants of whatever disaster had struck looked like a ghost ship, silent and lifeless. Jacob guided the shuttle carefully toward the docking bay, maneuvering around chunks of twisted metal. As they approached, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. Still, he pushed forward, determined to uncover the truth. Once docked, the team suited up and prepared to enter the station. The airlock hissed open, revealing a corridor dimly lit by emergency lights. The atmosphere was thick with dust, and the silence was oppressive. Every step echoed loudly, amplifying the sense of isolation. The walls bore signs of chaos: overturned furniture, shattered glass, and dark stains that looked disturbingly like dried blood. "This place has seen better days," Sam muttered, her voice muffled by her helmet. She tightened her grip on the medical kit slung over her shoulder, though she doubted it would do much good against whatever had caused this destruction. Alina activated her scanner, searching for any trace of survivors. "There's no heat signatures," she reported grimly. Whatever happened here, it didn't leave anyone behind. As they moved deeper into the station, the evidence of panic grew more pronounced. In one room, papers were scattered across the floor, and computer terminals flashed error messages. In another, a chair lay overturned next to a desk covered in spilled coffee. It was as if the occupants had fled in a hurry, abandoning everything in their haste. Then they found the logs. Alina knelt beside a damaged terminal, her gloved hands working quickly to access the fragmented files. The recordings were disjointed, piecing together a horrifying story. The researchers had discovered something, a mysterious artifact brought back from a nearby planet. At first it seemed harmless, an object of scientific curiosity. But then, things started to go wrong. Equipment malfunctioned. People disappeared.
Hi.
And then came the whispers, voices heard in empty corridors, speaking in languages no one recognized. One log stood out, recorded just hours before the station fell silent. A man's voice, trembling with fear, spoke directly into the camera. "It's alive," he whispered. "We thought it was just a relic, but it's alive. It's changing us, taking us." His words trailed off as the recording cut abruptly, leaving only static. Ryan listened intently, his expression unreadable. When the playback ended, he turned to his team. "We need to find that artifact," he said firmly. "If it's responsible for this, we can't let it fall into the wrong hands." No one argued. They all knew the stakes. But as they continued their search, none of them could shake the feeling that they weren't alone. Shadows flickered at the edges of their vision, and faint sounds echoed through the corridor's footsteps. Whispers, the creak of metal under strain. Something was watching them, waiting, and it wasn't done yet. End of document. Document. Part 1. The stars stretched endlessly before the stellar horizon, their light cold and distant. The ship floated silently through the vast emptiness of space, its engines humming softly as it navigated a region of the galaxy that few had ever explored. This was uncharted territory, a place where the maps ended and mystery began. For Captain Ryan Carter and his crew, it was both thrilling and unsettling. They were explorers, pioneers sent to push the boundaries of human knowledge, but even they couldn't ignore the strange feeling that something out there was watching them. On board the stellar horizon, life followed a predictable rhythm. The crew worked in shifts, monitoring instruments, running diagnostics, and cataloging anything unusual they encountered. It was during one of these routine scans that Elena Martinez, the ship's science officer, noticed something odd. Her station lit up with a faint but persistent signal. At first she thought it might be interference or a glitch in the equipment. But when she ran additional tests, the results confirmed what she feared: it was real. Elena leaned closer to her console, her fingers dancing across the controls as she tried to isolate the source. The signal was weak, barely more than static, but within it she could make out fragments of speech. Words drifted in and out, distorted and broken, but one phrase stood out clearly: "Help us, it's here." She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. There was no mistaking it. This was a distress call, and whoever sent it sounded terrified. "Captain," Elena called out, her voice steady despite the unease creeping into her mind. Ryan turned away from the navigation panel where he'd been reviewing course adjustments, crossed the bridge in a few quick strides, his boots clicking against the metal floor. His sharp blue eyes scanned the data displayed on Elena's screen, his brow furrowing as he processed the information. "Where is it coming from?" Ryan asked, his tone calm but firm. He trusted Elena's expertise, but this was unlike anything they'd encountered before. Distress calls weren't uncommon in deep space missions, but they usually came from ships or colonies. It's not random points in the void. Alina adjusted the settings on her console, narrowing down the signal's origin. A map of the surrounding sector appeared, dotted with stars and celestial bodies. One point blinked steadily, a small, unremarkable area near the edge of a dying star system. It's coming from a research station, she said finally, or at least what's left of one. Ryan frowned. What do you mean, what's left? The signal's erratic, like the station's systems are failing, Alina explained. And judging by the energy readings, it's been abandoned for some time. But someone or something is still transmitting. The news sent a ripple of tension through the bridge. Lieutenant Jacob Hayes, who was seated at the helm, glanced over his shoulder. You think it's worth checking out, sir? He asked cautiously. Jacob had been on enough missions to know that not every mystery ended well. Ryan hesitated for a moment, weighing the risks. On one hand, investigating the signal could put the crew in danger. On the other, ignoring a potential cry for help went against everything they stood for. Finally, he nodded. We're going to take a look, he decided. But we'll proceed with caution. Prep a shuttle and assemble a team. Within an hour, the shuttle was ready. Ryan led the mission, accompanied by Alina Jacob and Samantha Sam Brooks, the ship's medic. As they detached from the stellar horizon and headed toward the coordinates, the mood inside the shuttle was tense. No one spoke much, each lost in their own thoughts. The closer they got to the source of the signal, the stronger the sense. A foreboding became. When the research station finally came into view, it was clear that something catastrophic had happened. The structure floated eerily in the darkness, its once pristine surface now scarred and battered. Large sections of the hull were missing, exposing the interior to the vacuum of space. Debris surrounded the station, remnants of whatever disaster had struck. It looked like a ghost ship, silent and lifeless. Jacob guided the shuttle carefully toward the docking bay, maneuvering around chunks of twisted metal. As they approached, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. Still, he pushed forward, determined to uncover the truth. Once docked, the team suited up and prepared to enter the station. The airlock hissed open, revealing a corridor dimly lit by emergency lights. The atmosphere was thick with dust, and the silence was oppressive. Every step echoed loudly, amplifying the sense of isolation. The walls bore signs of chaos: overturned furniture, shattered glass, dark stains that looked disturbingly like dried blood. This place has seen better days, Sam muttered, her voice muffled by her helmet. She tightened her grip on the medical kit slung over her shoulder, though she doubted it would do much good against whatever had caused this destruction. Alina activated her scanner, searching for any trace of survivors. There's no heat signatures, she reported grimly. Whatever happened here, it didn't leave anyone behind. As they moved deeper into the station, the evidence of panic grew more pronounced. One room, papers were scattered across. The floor and computer terminals flashed error messages. In another, a chair lay overturned next to a desk covered in spilled coffee. It was as if the occupants had fled in a hurry, abandoning everything in their haste. Then they found the logs. Alina knelt beside a damaged terminal, her gloved hands working quickly to access the fragmented files. The recordings were disjointed, piecing together a horrifying story. The researchers had discovered something, a mysterious artifact brought back from a nearby planet. At first, it seemed harmless, an object of scientific curiosity. But then, things started to go wrong. Equipment malfunctioned, people disappeared. And then came the whispers, voices heard in empty corridors, speaking in languages no one recognized. One log stood out, recorded just hours before the station fell silent. A man's voice, trembling with fear, spoke directly into the camera. "It's alive," he whispered. "We thought it was just a relic, but it's alive. It's changing us, taking us." His words trailed off as the recording cut abruptly, leaving only static. Ryan listened intently, his expression unreadable. When the playback ended, he turned to his team. We need to find that artifact, he said firmly. If it's responsible for this, we can't let it fall into the wrong hands. No one argued. They all knew the stakes. But as they continued their search, none of them could shake the feeling that they weren't alone. Shadows flickered at the edges of their vision, and faint sounds echoed through the corridor's footsteps. Whispers, the creak of metal under. Strain, something was watching them, waiting. # document. Part 2, the team moved cautiously through the derelict research station, their footsteps echoing in the oppressive silence. The air was stale and cold, carrying with it the faint metallic temps of decay. Every sound, the creak of a loose panel, the hiss of escaping gas made them flinch. Their flashlights cut through the gloom, revealing more signs of chaos, overturned desks, shattered glass, and scorch marks on the walls. It was as if the station had been hit by some unseen force, one that left destruction in its wake, but no clear explanation. Elena Martinez paused by another damaged terminal, her gloved fingers tapping rapidly on the cracked screen. She was piecing together fragments of data logs, trying to understand what had happened here. Each new discovery added to the growing sense of dread. This isn't just an accident, she murmured, her voice barely audible over the hum of failing systems. Whatever they found, it wasn't natural. Ryan Carter stood nearby, scanning the room with his flashlight. His sharp eyes caught every detail, from the jagged claw-like scratches gouged into the walls to the dark stains that looked disturbingly like dried blood. He tightened his grip on the stun rifle slung across his shoulder, though he doubted it would do much good against whatever had caused this devastation. "What else can you tell us?" asked Elena, keeping his tone calm despite the unease gnawing at him. She hesitated, scrolling through the fragmented files. "From what I've gathered, the researchers were studying an artifact recovered from a nearby planet. At first it seemed inerta, a simple object of scientific curiosity. But then strange things started happening. Equipment failures, hallucinations, disappearances." Her voice faltered for a moment before she continued. "One log mentioned whispers, voices coming from nowhere. And then there's this." She pointed to a line of text on the screen. Asterisk. "It's not what we thought. It's alive." Asterisk. Jacob Hayes shifted uncomfortably behind her, adjusting the strap of his utility belt. "Alive? You mean like sentient?" he asked, his skepticism masking his fear. Jacob prided himself on being practical, someone who trusted facts over speculation. Even he couldn't deny the evidence staring them in the face. "I don't know," Elena admitted. "But whatever it is, it's dangerous. And it's still here." Sam Brooks, the medic, stepped forward, her medical kit clinking softly against her side. "If it's still here, why haven't we seen anyone, or anything?" she asked, glancing nervously over her shoulder. The shadows seemed to stretch longer the deeper they went into the station, twisting unnaturally in the dim light. "The question, isn't it?" Ryan said grimly. "Let's keep moving. We need to find that artifact." And it wasn't done yet. End of document. Document. Part 3. Back aboard the Stellar Horizon. The mood was tense. The crew gathered in the main lab, their eyes fixed on the containment unit holding the artifact. Its runes glowed faintly, pulsing with an otherworldly rhythm that seemed to sync with the ship's hum. No one spoke for a long moment. The weight of what they had brought aboard hung heavy in the air. Ryan Carter stood at the head of the table, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. His face was unreadable, but the tension in his jaw betrayed his unease. "We need answers," he said finally, breaking the silence. His voice was calm but firm, carrying the authority of someone who refused to let fear take control. "Lena, tell us everything you've got so far." Lena Martinez nodded and stepped closer to the artifact, her tablet in hand. She tapped a few commands, bringing up the data she'd collected during their brief encounter. "The artifact is unlike anything we've ever seen," she began, her tone measured but tinged with urgency. "It's emitting a type of energy that doesn't match any known spectrum. It's alive, in a way, not biologically, but it interacts with its surroundings, like a living organism." Jacob Hayes shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his fingers drumming against the edge of the table. "You mean it's messing with reality?" he asked, skepticism creeping into his voice. Despite his outward bravado, there was no mistaking the flicker of fear in his eyes. Exactly, Alina replied. It's altering the environment around it, distorting time, space, even perception.
Ow.
That's why we saw those symbols carved into the walls and heard that thing back on the station. It wasn't just affecting the physical world. It was inside our heads, too. Samantha Sam Brooks leaned forward, her brow furrowed. So it's not just some alien relic? She said slowly. It's a weapon. A tool. What? That's the problem, Alina admitted. I don't know yet. But based on the logs we recovered, the researchers thought it might be some kind of gateway or conduit. They believed it could open portals to other dimensions or worse. Worse? Jacob echoed, his voice rising slightly. What's worse than opening doors to God knows where? Lena hesitated, glancing at the artifact before answering. He mentioned something called the Devourer. It's only mentioned briefly, but from context it sounds like a being, something ancient and powerful. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Ryan rubbed his temples, trying to process the information. If this Devourer is real, then we can't afford to keep the artifact on board, he said finally. It's too dangerous. But ejecting it won't solve the problem, Alina countered. If it really is connected to another dimension or whatever this Devourer is, we need to understand how it works. Destroying it without knowing more could make things worse. Ryan frowned, torn between caution and action. He glanced at Sam, who had been unusually quiet. Medically speaking, what's the risk to the crew? He asked. Sam sighed, leaning back in her chair. Aside from the obvious psychological effects, I'm starting to see symptoms of stress manifesting physically. Headaches, fatigue, hallucinations. It's like the artifact is feeding off us somehow. If we don't figure out how to contain it properly, people are going to start getting hurt, or worse. Her words sent a ripple of unease through the group. Hey. Jacob ran a hand through his short hair, muttering under his breath. Great, just great. So we're stuck with a ticking time bomb that messes with your mind and might summon some cosmic horror. Anything else we should know? Before anyone could respond, the lights flickered. For a split second, the lab was plunged into darkness, and when the power returned, the atmosphere felt heavier, charged with an invisible energy. The artifact's runes pulsed brighter, almost as if reacting to something. Everyone froze, their eyes locked on the containment unit. What just happened? Ryan demanded, turning to Alina. I don't know, she admitted, her voice tight with worry. But it's not good. It's the artifact's energy output just spiked. It's reaching out, reaching out. Jacob repeated, standing abruptly. To what us? The ship? Maybe both, Alina said grimly. Or maybe it's trying to communicate. Communicate, Jacob scoffed. With who? Us? Because I'm pretty sure none of us speak glowing pulse language. Oh, Alina. Corrected him, not us. Something else. Remember the whispers we heard on the station? Us. Those weren't random noises. They were messages. And now, whatever's listening might be closer than we think. As if on cue, a low hum filled the room, resonating deep within their chests. It wasn't loud, but it was impossible to ignore a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The temperature dropped sharply, causing their breath to fog in the air. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls, twisting into shapes that shouldn't exist. Ryan moved instinctively toward the artifact, his hand resting on the stun rifle at his side. Everyone stay calm, he ordered, though his own pulse was racing. Alina shut it down. Now I'm trying, Lena snapped, her fingers flying over her tablet. But the systems aren't responding. It's overriding everything. Hum grew louder, vibrating violently enough to rattle equipment on the shelves. A sharp, crackling noise erupted from the containment unit, followed by a burst of light so intense it forced them to shield their eyes. When the glare faded, the artifact sat motionless, its runes dimmed but still faintly glowing. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a voice low, guttural, and impossibly ancient spoke directly into their minds. Asterisk, asterisk, you have taken what is mine. Asterisk, asterisk, the words reverberated through their skulls, leaving behind a cold certainty that they were no longer alone. Jacob staggered back, clutching his head. He gasped, his voice shaking. It knows we're here, Alina whispered, her face pale, and it's not happy. Ryan stepped forward, his expression hardening. Then, let's make one thing clear, he said, raising his voice despite knowing the entity wouldn't hear him in the traditional sense. We're not giving it back. The artifact responded immediately. Its runes flared to life, burning with an intensity that made them squint. The hum returned, louder and angrier this time, accompanied by a wave of pressure that knocked several crew members off their feet. Equipment toppled from shelves and alarms blared throughout the ship. Ryan, we need to do something, Sam shouted over the noise, helping Jacob to his feet. Her medical training kicked in as she assessed the situation, but even she couldn't deny the overwhelming sense of dread filling the room. Ryan turned to Alina, desperation edging into his voice. Is there any way to block it? Stop it from doing whatever it's doing? There might be, Alina said quickly, pulling up schematics on her tablet. If we reroute auxiliary power to create an electromagnetic field, we might be able to suppress its energy output. But it'll take time, and we'll need everyone working together. Then get started, Ryan ordered. Jacob, help Alina. With the modifications, Sam monitored the crew. We can't afford anyone collapsing under the strain. The team sprang into action, each person focusing on their task despite the growing chaos around them. As they worked, the artifact continued to resist, its influence spreading like a virus. Crew members reported seeing figures moving in the corners of their vision, hearing whispers calling their names. Some claimed they felt hands brushing against their skin, but no one was there. In the lab, Alina and Jacob worked frantically to assemble the containment field generator. Sweat dripped from their foreheads as they struggled to stabilize the volatile components. This is insane, Jacob muttered, tightening a connection with trembling hands. We're playing with forces we don't understand. And if we don't, we're dead, Alina shot back, her tone sharper than usual. Focus, Jacob. We're running out of time. She found one young engineer huddled in a corner, rocking back and forth as tears streamed down his face. It's coming for me, he whimpered, clutching his head. It knows my name. Sam knelt beside him, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You're safe, she said firmly, though her own heart raced. Whatever you're seeing, it's not real. Stay with me, okay? You're stronger than this. Her words seemed to anchor him, and after a few moments, he nodded shakily. Still, Sam couldn't shake the feeling that the artifact's influence was growing stronger. Every step she took felt heavier, every shadow darker. It was as if the ship itself was alive, conspiring against them. Back in the lab, the containment. The field generator was nearly complete. Alina double-checked the final connections, while Jacob powered up the system. Ready? He asked, his voice barely audible over the cacophony of alarms and groaning metal. As ready as we'll ever be, Alina replied, gripping the console tightly. Activate it. Jacob flipped the switch, and the generator roared to life. Shimmering barrier enveloped the artifact, cutting off its glow and silencing the hum. For a brief moment, the oppressive atmosphere lifted. The crew breathed a collective sigh of relief. But the victory was short-lived. Beneath the containment field, the artifact quivered, its runes flickering erratically. Then with a deafening crack, the barrier collapsed, releasing a surge of energy that threw everyone to the ground. The artifact pulsed once more, brighter. And angrier than before, we underestimated it. Alina gasped, struggling to sit up. Blood trickled from a cut on her forehead, but she ignored it. Document. Part 4, the artifact sat quietly in its containment unit, its runes glowing faintly as if mocking their efforts. The crew of the Stellar Horizon had managed to stabilize the ship's systems after the failed attempt to suppress its energy, but the damage was done. Tension hung thick in the air, heavier than ever before. Everyone aboard could feel that the artifact wasn't just an object. It was alive, aware, and growing stronger with each passing moment. Ryan Carter stood on the bridge, staring at the security feed showing the lab where the artifact was stored. His mind raced with questions he couldn't answer. What did it want? Why had it chosen them? Most importantly, how could they stop it? He clenched his fists tightly, trying to push aside the gnawing fear that threatened to overwhelm him. Fear wouldn't help anyone now. Action would. Captain, Elena Martinez's voice came over the intercom, pulling him from his thoughts. We've got a problem. Ryan turned toward the nearest console and pressed the communication button. What is it, Elena? Already bracing himself for bad news, it's affecting the ship's core systems, she replied, her tone urgent but controlled. I'm seeing fluctuations in the reactor output. If this keeps up, we risk a meltdown. Ryan cursed under his breath. Of all the things they needed right now, a failing reactor wasn't one of them. Can you stabilize it? He asked. For now, yes, Elena answered. But I can't promise how long it'll hold. Whatever this thing is, it's feeding off our energy, literally and figuratively. Ryan nodded grimly. Can we update it? And find a way to isolate it from the rest of the ship. We can't let it spread any further. Understood, Elena said before cutting the connection. As Ryan mulled over the situation, Jacob Hayes entered the bridge, his face pale and drawn. Normally the calmest member of the crew, Jacob looked like he hadn't slept in days and maybe he hadn't. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His hands trembled slightly as he leaned against the wall. You look like hell, Ryan said bluntly. Though not unkindly, Jacob forced a weak smile. Feel like it too, he admitted. Every time I close my eyes, I see things. Shadows moving when they shouldn't. Figures standing in corners, watching me. I don't know if it's real, or if it's in my head, but it feels real enough. Ryan frowned, stepping closer. You're not alone, he said quietly. Sam told me some of the crew are experiencing the same thing. Hallucinations, paranoia spreading. Jacob shook his head, frustration creeping into his voice. That's just it, Captain. It's not just hallucinations. It's somethings. Here, on this ship. With us, I don't know what it is, but it's getting closer. Before Ryan could respond, the lights flickered again, dimming briefly before returning to full brightness. A low hum filled the bridge, resonating through the floor and walls. It was the same sound they'd heard earlier, only louder now, more insistent. Both men froze, exchanging a glance that spoke volumes without words. Get everyone to the lab, Ryan ordered, grabbing his stun rifle from its holster. We need to figure out what's happening now. By the time Ryan and Jacob reached the lab, the rest of the team had already assembled. Elena and Sam were huddled near the containment unit, their faces pale but determined. The artifact pulsed steadily, its glow brighter than ever before. Around them, equipment malfunctioned. Sporadically, monitors displayed static. Tools sparked unpredictably, and the temperature fluctuated wildly. What's going on? Ryan demanded, scanning the room for signs of danger. It started a few minutes ago, Elena explained, her voice strained. The artifact's energy output has increased exponentially. It's destabilizing everything around it. I think it's trying to break free. Break free? Jacob echoed, his voice rising in alarm. From the containment unit, Elena hesitated, then nodded. Yes, but also from something else, like it's reaching out beyond this ship. Toward whatever or whoever it's connected to. Right. Jaw tightened. Then we need to stop it. Now. Sam stepped forward, clutching her medical kit tightly. How do we even fight something like this? It's not physical, it's inside our heads, messing with our minds. Half the crew is barely functioning because of it. Focus on containing it, Ryan said firmly. Lena, is there anything left we can try to suppress its energy? Lena hesitated, glancing at the artifact. There might be one option, she admitted reluctantly. A failsafe protocol built into the containment system. It creates a localized EMP blast strong enough to disrupt anything within range, including the artifact's energy field. But what? Ryan pressed. But it's risky, Elena finished. If it doesn't work, the artifact could overload completely. If it does work, It might trigger a chain reaction that damages the ship's systems permanently. Ryan didn't hesitate. Do it. Alina swallowed hard, nodding. Give me 10 minutes to prep the sequence. As Alina worked, the rest of the team prepared for the worst. Jacob helped secure loose equipment while Sam distributed sedatives to crew members who were struggling with the psychological effects of the artifact's presence. Despite their best efforts, the atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. Shadows seemed to twist unnaturally, forming shapes that vanished when looked at directly. Whispers echoed through the corridors, voices speaking in languages no one recognized. Everyone felt at the weight of something ancient and malevolent pressing down on them. Finally, Lena straightened, her face pale but resolute. "It's ready," she announced. "Once I activate the sequence, we'll have 60 seconds to evacuate the lab. After that, the EMP will detonate automatically." Ryan nodded. "Everyone, move out. Lena, you're with me." The group hurried toward the door, but as they reached it, the artifact flared violently, bathing the room in blinding light. The humming intensified, becoming a deafening roar that shook the entire ship. Instruments exploded, sending shards of metal flying in every direction. Through the chaos, a shadowy figure materialized near the containment unit hall. Gaunt and impossibly thin, with limbs that stretched unnaturally long, its glowing eyes locked onto the fleeing crew, and a guttural growl reverberated through the chamber. "Go!" Ryan shouted, shoving Jacob and Sam ahead of him. "Alina, seal the doors behind us." Lena hesitated for a split second, her gaze fixed on the creature. Then, with a sharp nod, she slammed her hand against the control panel, sealing the lab shut. The heavy metal doors slid closed just as the entity lunged forward. Slamming against the barrier with enough force to dent the reinforced steel, the team sprinted down the corridor, hearts pounding as they put distance between themselves and the lab. Behind them, the ship groaned under the strain of the artifact's power surge. Alarms blared, warning of imminent critical failure. "How much time until the EMP goes off?" Ryan asked, his voice tight with urgency. 45 seconds, Alina replied, checking her tablet. But the artifact's energy spike might trigger it early. "Perfect," Jacob muttered sarcastically, dodging a falling panel. "Just perfect." They rounded a corner and skidded to a halt as the lights overhead flickered violently. Ahead of them, another shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, blocking their path. Unlike the first entity, this one was smaller, almost human-like. But its face was featureless save for a gaping maw filled with jagged teeth. It hissed, raising clawed hands as if preparing to strike. "Back," Ryan barked, raising his stun rifle. He fired a shot, striking the creature squarely in the chest. It staggered backward, letting out an ear-splitting screech. But instead of collapsing, it dissolved into smoke, vanishing into thin air. What the hell was that? Sam gasped, clutching her medkit like a weapon. "I don't know," Ryan admitted, lowering his rifle.
Right.
"But I doubt it's gone for good." Alina checked her timer again. 20 seconds. The group resumed their sprint, racing toward the safety of the engineering bay. As they ran, the ship shuddered violently, throwing several crew members off balance. Sparks rained down from exposed wires and sections of the ceiling collapsed, forcing them to take detours. The air grew colder, and the whispers returned, louder and angrier than before. Finally, they reached the engineering bay, slamming the doors shut behind them. Alina rushed to the main console, initiating emergency lockdown protocols. 10 seconds, she called out, her voice trembling. Everyone braced themselves, holding their breath as the countdown ticked away. When the EMP detonated, the entire ship lurched violently, plunging them into darkness. For a moment, there was only silence, a deafening void that seemed to stretch endlessly. Then slowly the backup generators kicked in, restoring minimal lighting. Ryan exhaled sharply, slumping against the wall. "Did it work?" he asked, looking to Alina. She hesitated, checking the readings on her tablet. "The artifact's energy signature is suppressed," she reported cautiously, "but not eliminated. Still active, just weaker." Ryan pushed himself upright, his expression hardening. "Then we use that time wisely. Elena. Keep monitoring the artifact. Jacob, check the structural integrity of the ship. Sam, tend to the crew. We can't afford anyone breaking down. The team nodded, dispersing to carry out their tasks. As Ryan watched them go, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were playing a losing game. The artifact had shown them glimpses of its true nature, and it was far beyond anything they were equipped to handle. But giving up wasn't an option, not yet. For now, they had. Document Part 5. The stellar horizon drifted silently through space, its systems running on minimal power. The MP blast had done its job, temporarily suppressing the artifact's energy, but the cost was evident in every corner of the ship. Lights flickered intermittently, casting long shadows that danced unnaturally along the walls. Emergency alarms blared at irregular intervals, their shrill tones grating against frayed nerves. The crew moved cautiously through the corridors, their faces pale and drawn, haunted by what they'd seen and what they feared might still be lurking. Ryan Carter stood in the engineering bay, staring at the readouts displayed on a cracked monitor. The numbers told him little he didn't already know. The ship's core systems were compromised, the reactor unstable, and the artifact's presence continued to exert an influence over everything around it, despite the temporary suppression. Elena Martinez warned him that the artifact was far from neutralized. Its energy signature remained detectable, faint but persistent, like a heartbeat waiting to quicken again. We're running out of options, Ryan muttered under his breath, rubbing his temples. Fatigue weighed heavily on him, both physical and mental. He hadn't slept since the incident in the lab, and the constant pressure of leadership gnawed at him like a relentless ache. He glanced up as Jacob Hayes entered the room, carrying a toolkit slung over one shoulder. "How bad is it?" Ryan asked without preamble. Jacob set the toolkit down with a heavy sigh. "Bad enough," he replied, his voice flat. "The hull integrity is holding for now, but there are stress fractures forming near the aft section. If we hit any turbulence or take another EMP blast, we risk losing structural stability." Ryan nodded grimly. "And repairs?" "It's not happening," Jacob said bluntly. "We don't have the parts or the manpower to fix everything. The crew can barely function right now. Whatever that thing is doing to us, it's not just messing with the ship, it's eating away at our minds." Ryan clenched his jaw, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "Keep patching what you can," he ordered. "We need this ship operational for as long as possible." Jacob gave a curt nod and turned to leave, but paused halfway to the door. "Captain," he began hesitantly, "you've got to tell me straight. Do you think we're going to make it out of this?" For a moment, Ryan didn't answer. Honesty warred with duty in his mind. Telling Jacob the truth that their chances were slim would only deepen the despair already gripping the crew. But lying would do no one any favors either. Finally, he met Jacob's gaze squarely. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I'll be damned if I let us give up without a fight." Jacob nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. Without another word, he left the engineering bay, leaving Ryan alone with his thoughts. Meanwhile, in the medical bay, Samantha Sam Brooks worked tirelessly to treat the growing number of crew members showing signs of psychological distress. Some sat quietly, staring blankly into space, while others paced restlessly, muttering to themselves about shadows and whispers. One young technician sobbed uncontrollably, clutching her knees to her chest as she rocked back and forth. Sam knelt beside her, speaking softly in an attempt to calm her down. "It's okay," Sam said gently, placing a hand on the woman's shoulder. "You're safe here. Whatever you're seeing, it's not real." The technician shook her head violently, tears streaming down her face. "It knows my name," she whispered hoarsely. "It's inside my head." Sam swallowed hard, fighting back her own unease. She knew the woman wasn't imagining things, at least, not entirely. The artifact's influence was spreading, seeping into their minds and twisting reality itself. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was something far more insidious, something that preyed on their deepest insecurities and darkest fears, as Sam administered a sedative to calm the technician. Elena Martinez entered the medical bay, her tablet clutched tightly in her hands. Her eyes darted around the room, taking in the scene before focusing on Sam. "How are they holding up?" Elena asked quietly, though the answer was obvious. as well as can be expected, Sam replied, standing up and brushing a strand of hair from her face. Some are worse than others. Few have started hallucinating constantly. If this keeps up, I don't know how much longer they'll last. Alina nodded grimly, glancing at the tablet screen. That's why I'm here. I've been analyzing the artifacts, energy patterns, and it's adapting. Sam's stomach dropped. What do you mean adapting? It's learning, Alina explained. Every time we try to suppress it, it finds a way to counteract us. Right now, it's using our own emotions against us, amplifying fear, anxiety, paranoia. But that's just the beginning. If we don't stop it soon, it could escalate to something far worse. Like what? Sam pressed, dread creeping into her voice. Alina hesitated, choosing her words carefully, like manifesting physically. Those shadowy figures we've seen, they might not just be illusions. If the artifact gains enough strength, it could bring them fully into existence. Sam stared at her, horror dawning on her face. Are you saying it could create monsters? Not monsters, Alina corrected. Something worse. Fragments of whatever it's connected to the devourer.
Ow, pieces.
Of it breaking through into our reality. The weight of Elena's words settled over them like a suffocating blanket. Neither spoke for a long moment, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Sam broke the silence. Then we need to destroy it. Completely. Before it's too late. Wish it were that simple, Alina said with a bitter laugh. Destroying it isn't an option. Not yet, anyway. We don't understand it well enough. If we try to obliterate it now, we might trigger something catastrophic like opening a gateway. For the devourer itself? So, what do we do? Sam demanded, her voice rising slightly. Sit here and wait for it to kill us all. No, Alina replied firmly. We find a way to contain it permanently. Or at least long enough for someone else to deal with it. Sam opened her mouth to argue further, but the sound of footsteps interrupted her. Both women turned to see Ryan entering the medical bay, his expression grim. We've got bigger problems, he announced, without preamble. Alina, I need your help on the bridge. Something's wrong with the navigation system, Alina exchanged. A glance with Sam before nodding and following Ryan out of the room. As they walked, Ryan filled her in on the details. The autopilot's malfunctioning, he explained. It's rerouting us off course, toward a nearby star system. Can't override it, Alina frowned. Could it be residual effects from the EMP? Maybe, Ryan admitted, but I don't think so. This feels deliberate. When they reached the bridge, the situation became even clearer and more alarming. The navigation console displayed erratic readings, showing the ship veering dangerously close to a massive gas giant orbiting the edge of the star system. Worse still, the autopilot controls were completely unresponsive, locked into a course that would send the stellar horizon crashing into the planet's atmosphere within hours. This isn't natural interference, Lena said, scanning the data quickly. It's the artifact. It's influencing the ship's systems remotely. Ryan cursed under his breath. Can you fix it? I'll try, Elena replied, sliding into the pilot's seat. Her fingers flew over the controls as she attempted to regain manual control of the ship. Behind her, Ryan monitored the trajectory display, watching as the countdown to impact ticked steadily downward. Minutes passed in tense silence. The hum of the engines grew louder as the ship accelerated, pulled inexorably toward the gas giant. Just when it seemed all hope was lost, Elena let out a triumphant cry. Got it, she exclaimed, slamming her fist against the console. The autopilot disengaged with a loud beep, and the ship lurched as Ryan wrestled with the manual controls, steering them away from the planet. For a brief moment, relief washed over the bridge, but it was short-lived. As the immediate crisis subsided, a new alarm sounded, one that sent chills down their spines. The artifact's energy levels are rising again, Elena reported, her voice tight with urgency. It's breaking free of the suppression field faster than I anticipated. Ryan's grip tightened on the console. How long until it's fully active? Less than an hour, Elena replied grimly. Ryan turned to her, his expression resolute. Then we'd better figure out what to do next fast. Back in the lab, The artifact pulsed rhythmically, its runes glowing brighter with each passing second. Shadows writhed across the walls, coalescing into shapes that twisted and shifted unnaturally. Faint whispers echoed through the chamber, growing louder and more distinct. And then, suddenly the whispers stopped. In their place came a single, deafening roar sound, so powerful it shattered the glass panels lining the lab. Flared violently, bathing the room in blinding light. When the glare faded, the containment unit was empty. End of document. Document. Part 6. Panic erupted aboard the stellar horizon. Word spread quickly through the ship that the artifact had escaped its containment unit, and chaos followed in its wake. Crew members scrambled to secure themselves, locking doors and barricading corridors as if it were a physical intruder they could keep out. But the artifact wasn't something that could be stopped with metal or bolts. It was everywhere, seeping into the walls, the air, their minds. Ryan Carter stood on the bridge, his face pale but determined. The alarms blared incessantly, warning of critical system failures across the ship. Navigation controls flickered unpredictably. Life support systems fluctuated wildly. The reactor core groaned under the strain of an invisible force pushing against it. Whatever the artifact was doing, it wasn't just breaking free, it was taking control. Alina Ryan barked, turning to the science officer who sat hunched over her console. "Tell me you've got something." Lena Martinez shook her head, frustration etched into every line of her face. "I don't know how it escaped," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "The suppression field should have held it longer. It's like it learned from us, adapted." Ryan clenched his fists tightly, trying to push down the rising tide of despair. "Learning or not, we can't let it take over this ship." "What are our options?" Lena hesitated, glancing at her tablet before answering. "We might still have one chance," she said cautiously. "There's a protocol designed for catastrophic containment breaches emergency purge. It vents all oxygen from affected sections of the ship, essentially creating a vacuum. If the artifact needs energy to manifest, cutting off its source might weaken it." Ryan frowned deeply, in the crew. "We evacuate unaffected areas first," Alina replied. "But we'd need to act fast. Once the artifact spreads further, there won't be any safe zones left." Jacob Hayes, who had been monitoring the structural integrity reports, spoke up. "You're talking about sacrificing parts of the ship, and anyone caught inside them too. Save the rest of us." "It's not ideal," Alina admitted grimly. But unless someone has a better idea." Silence fell over the bridge as the weight of her words sank in. No one liked the plan, but no one could argue with its logic either. Time was running out, and hesitation would only make things worse. "Do it," Ryan ordered finally. "Start evacuating non-essential personnel to the forward compartments. Seal off the lab and surrounding areas. Jacob, help Alina reroute power to the venting systems. Sam, make sure everyone knows what's happening. We can't afford panic slowing us down." The team sprang into action, each person focusing on their task, despite the overwhelming sense of dread hanging over them. As orders were relayed throughout the ship, the crew moved with a mix of urgency and resignation. Some muttered prayers under their breath. Others simply stared ahead, their eyes hollow with fear. In the medical bay, Samantha Sam Brooks worked tirelessly to calm terrified crew members. Many were already showing signs of acute stress, shaking hands, rapid breathing, and glazed expressions. She distributed sedatives liberally, knowing that keeping people calm was crucial if they hoped to survive the next few hours. "This is insane," one engineer muttered, pacing back and forth. "We're going to die out here, all because of some stupid rock." "It's not a rock," Sam corrected him sharply, though her own voice wavered. "And we're not dying, not if I have anything to say about it. Now sit down and take these." She pressed a hypospray into his hand, forcing him to comply. As she moved among the crew, Sam couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. Shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally long, twisting into shapes that shouldn't exist. Whispers echoed faintly in the background, calling her name. She tried to ignore them, focusing instead on her work. But the sensation grew stronger with each passing minute. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, she stepped into a corner and activated her comlink. "Captain," she said quietly, her voice tight with unease. "The artifact's influence is spreading faster than we thought. People are losing it. They're starting to turn on each other." Ryan's response came immediately, his tone grim. "We're working as fast as we can, Sam. Just hold on a little longer." Sam nodded, even though he couldn't see her. Understood. Meanwhile, in the engineering bay, Jacob Hayes cursed under his breath as he struggled to reroute power to the venting systems. Tools slipped from his trembling hands, and sparks flew as exposed wires short-circuited. Sweat dripped down his forehead, stinging his eyes, but he didn't stop. Every second counted. "You okay?" Elena asked, noticing his growing agitation. "I'm fine," Jacob snapped, though his voice betrayed his nerves. "Just focus on your end." Elena didn't argue. Instead, she turned back to her console, typing furiously as she finalized the emergency purge sequence. Her fingers hovered over the activation button, hesitating for a split second before she forced herself to press it. A loud hiss filled the air as oxygen began venting from the sealed-off sections of the ship. For a moment, it seemed to work. The artifact's energy signature dimmed slightly, stabilizing enough for the ship's systems to recover partially. Lights flickered back to full brightness, and the hum of failing machinery quieted. Hope surged briefly, but it was short-lived. A deafening roar echoed through the ship, shaking the hull violently. Panels fell from the ceiling, and loose objects tumbled across the floor. In the distance, screams pierced the air as shadowy figures emerged in the corridors, clawing at the walls and dragging their elongated limbs behind them. They weren't illusions anymore. They were real, solid, and terrifying. "They're here," Jacob whispered, his voice barely audible over the chaos. "The things from the whispers." Lena stared at him, her face pale. "It's manifesting. Them," she realized aloud. "Using our fear to bring them into existence." Ryan's voice crackled over the intercom. "Everyone, fall back to the forward compartments. Seal the bulkheads behind you." The crew obeyed without question, retreating en masse toward the designated safe zone. Doors slammed shut, sealing off entire sections of the ship. Those who couldn't reach safety in time were left behind, their screams fading into silence as the creatures descended upon them. Inside the forward compartment, the survivors huddled together, clinging to whatever weapons they could find. Ryan stood at the front, rallying the group despite the exhaustion etched into his features. "We're not done yet," he said firmly. "This isn't over. Not while we're still breathing." But even as he spoke, the temperature dropped sharply, and the air grew heavy with an oppressive presence. The artifact pulsed faintly in the darkness, its runes glowing brighter than ever before. It hadn't been defeated, it had merely shifted tactics, and now it was closer than ever. At the edge of the crowd, Sam noticed something moving in the shadows. At first, she thought it was another hallucination. But then she saw it clearly, a figure standing apart from the others, its form shifting unnaturally. Its glowing eyes locked onto hers, and a cold certainty settled in her chest. "It's here," she whispered, clutching her medkit tightly. "It's found us." Before anyone could react, the figure lunged forward, dissolving into smoke as it passed through the sealed bulkhead. The artifact's laughter echoed in their minds, mocking their feeble attempts to resist. Ryan tightened his grip on his stun rifle, his expression hardening. "Stay together," he ordered. "Whatever happens, don't let it separate us." Survivors braced themselves, weapons raised, hearts pounding in unison. They knew the odds were against them, but surrender wasn't an option. Not yet. For now, they fought. For survival. For hope. Against the unknown terror that had invaded their world. End of document. Document. Part 7. The forward compartment of the stellar horizon was crowded and tense. Filled with the low murmur of frightened voices, the survivors huddled together, their faces pale and drawn, clutching makeshift weapons or tools they hoped might offer some defense. Some sat quietly, staring blankly at the floor, while others whispered prayers under their breath. Fear hung thick in the air, a tangible force that pressed down on everyone present. Ryan Carter stood near the sealed bulkhead, his stun rifle slung across his shoulder. His eyes scanned the room, taking in the weary expressions of his crew. Felt the weight of their fear, their desperation. But he couldn't afford to let it overwhelm him. Not now. Not when leadership mattered most. Still. Even he couldn't deny the gnawing dread in his gut, the certainty that whatever waited beyond the barrier wasn't finished with them. "We need to stay calm," Ryan said aloud, his voice firm but steady. "Panicking will only make things worse." Elena Martinez nodded faintly from her position by the wall, where she had set up a portable scanner. Her hands trembled as she adjusted the device, trying to track the artifact's energy signature. "It's still here," she murmured, glancing at the readings. "Close to close." Jacob Hayes paced anxiously nearby, his weapon clutched tightly in his hand. Normally the calmest member of the team, Jacob looked like a man on edge, his movements jerky and erratic. "How is that possible?" he demanded, his voice rising slightly. "We vented those sections. There shouldn't be anything left." "It doesn't need oxygen," Elena replied grimly. "It feeds on fear, confusion, anything negative. And right now, we're giving it plenty to work with." Sam Brooks knelt beside a young technician who was struggling to breathe, her medical kit open at her side. She placed a reassuring hand on the woman's shoulder, speaking softly to calm her down. "You're okay," Sam said gently. "Just focus on your breathing, in and out." Slowly. Despite her efforts to appear composed, Sam's own hands shook as she worked. She could feel the presence of the artifact pressing against her mind, whispering cruel truths she didn't want to hear. As if on cue, the whispers grew louder, echoing through the chamber. They were disjointed at first, fragments of words spoken in languages no one recognized, but soon they coalesced into something clearer. A single phrase repeated over and over, cutting through the noise like a blade. Asterisk, asterisk, you cannot hide. Asterisk, asterisk, the survivors froze, their eyes darting around the room in search of the source. The lights flickered violently, plunging the compartment into near darkness for a brief moment before stabilizing again. When the illumination returned, a shadowy figure stood at the far end of the room, its form indistinct but unmistakably hostile. It's inside. Someone shouted, their voice cracking with terror. "No," Ryan barked, raising his rifle. "Stay focused. It's trying to divide us." The figure tilted its head, studying the group with glowing eyes that seemed to pierce straight through them, its limbs stretched unnaturally long, twisting and writhing like smoke-given form. For a moment it simply observed, silent and calculating. Then, without warning, it lunged forward, dissolving into a cloud of darkness that swept across. The room panic erupted as the shadow passed through the crowd, leaving screams in its wake. People dropped to their knees, clutching their heads as visions flooded their minds, images of loved ones dying. Failures replayed endlessly, fears brought to life in vivid detail. Sam rushed to help those who collapsed, administering sedatives and shouting orders to anyone still standing. "Help me get them behind cover," she yelled, dragging an unconscious crewman toward the wall. Others followed her lead, forming a protective circle around the fallen. Ryan fired a shot at the swirling mass of shadows, but the bolt passed harmlessly through it, dissipating into nothingness. "It's not physical," he called out, lowering his weapon. "Aim for the edges. Disrupt its form." Elena scrambled to recalibrate her scanner, searching for a weakness. "Its energy field fluctuates when it moves," she reported urgently. "If we can hit it during one of those fluctuations, we might destabilize it." Jacob hesitated, then nodded sharply. "Got it," he said, gripping his weapon tighter. "Let's do this." The three of them spread out, creating a perimeter around the survivors. As the shadow reformed, solidifying into a grotesque humanoid shape, they opened fire simultaneously. Bolts of energy crackled through the air, striking the creature at different angles. For a fleeting moment, it staggered, its form flickering like static on a screen. But just as quickly, it recovered. Lashing out with clawed hands that tore through metal and flesh alike, one crewman screamed as he was thrown against the wall, his body crumpling to the ground. Blood pooled beneath him, and the sight sent ripples of horror through the group. Sam abandoned her post to tend to him, her hands moving frantically to stop the bleeding. "Hold on!" she pleaded, though she knew it was too late. Ryan gritted his teeth, forcing himself to focus. "Fall back," he ordered. "Regroup near the control panel." The survivors obeyed, retreating in disarray as the creature advanced. Its laughter echoed in their minds, mocking their feeble attempts to fight back. Ryan glanced at Alina, who was typing furiously on her tablet. "Anything yet?" he asked, his voice tight with urgency. "I'm working on it," Alina snapped, sweat dripping from her brow. "Give me a second." Jacob stepped forward, placing himself between the creature and the rest of the group. "You want us? Come and get me," shouted, firing another volley of shots. The distraction gave Alina precious seconds to complete her calculations. "Now," she cried, slamming her fist against the console. A burst of electromagnetic energy surged through the room, targeting the artifact's influence. The creature screeched, its form dissolving partially as the attack disrupted its connection to the ship's systems. But it wasn't enough to destroy it. Within moments, the shadow reformed, angrier and more determined than before. It loomed over them, its glowing eyes narrowing with malice. "You are mine," it growled, its voice reverberating through the chamber. Ryan raised his rifle again, its expression resolute despite the hopelessness of their situation. "Not yet," he muttered, pulling the trigger. The shot struck, true, hitting the creature during another fluctuation in its energy field. This time, it staggered visibly, its form flickering wildly. "Keep hitting it," Ryan shouted, reloading his weapon. "Don't let it recover." The survivors rallied, firing everything they had at the creature. Tools, fragments of debris, even loose panels were hurled at it in desperation. Each impact weakened it further, until finally, with a deafening roar, the shadow dissolved completely, vanishing into thin air. For a moment, there was silence. The survivors stared at the empty space where the creature had been, their chests heaving with exertion. No one dared to move, afraid that it might return. Then the lights flickered again, and a deep, guttural laugh echoed through the compartment. The artifact's presence lingered, stronger than ever. "It's not gone," Alina whispered, her voice trembling. "It's just waiting." Ryan lowered his weapon, his shoulders sagging with exhaustion. "Then we wait too," he said grimly. "And when it comes back, we'll be ready." Behind him, Sam tended to the wounded, her hands stained with blood. Jacob leaned heavily against the wall, his face pale but resolute. Around them, the survivors huddled closer together, drawing strength from each other in the face of unimaginable terror. They had survived for now. None of them doubted that the worst was yet to come. End of document.